So should NBC have fired Matthew Dowd for what he said?
Meantime, we've got new fallout. MSNBC now firing a political analyst, Matthew Dowd, over comments that he made during the network's coverage of this tragedy.
But following up what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
MSNBC's president, Rebecca Cutler, apologizing for the remarks and released a statement saying, in part, during our breaking news coverage of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, Matthew Dowd made comments that were inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable. Dowd then responding on X, saying that my thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. On an earlier appearance on MSNBC, I was asked a question on the environment we are in. I apologize for my tone and words.
I mean, compare it to the vitriol that came from Trump, trying to blame this on Democrats.
It's the enemy from within.
But maybe I think MSNBC isn't trying to appease the right as much as they are trying to keep the bar high. That said, over the course of my career, I'm not the person you would come to for calm discourse under times such as these. Yet nonetheless, I somehow figured it out. I hosted a talk radio show in D.C. and San Francisco from 94 to 2021 through OJ, Oklahoma City, Clinton's impeachment, 9/11, the Iraq-Afghan wars, the financial collapse, the racist attacks against Obama, Sandy Hook, COVID, and of course, Trump. And I learned that context is everything. I remember the vitriol from talk show host Jim Bohannon after the Oklahoma City bombing. He went on the air assuming it was the Middle East and called for war. But ironically, it was American servicemen. I don't know if he learned a lesson, but I did. Fortunately for me, all through my professional career, I had smart producers and talented news people who stepped carefully and wisely, and I learned from them.
You're telling me this is Donald Trump's fault? This is in the left. Violence is in the DNA of the American left and always has been.
You're high most of the time. So watching Matthew Dowd be fired for repeating what I've been reading on social media, it doesn't surprise me. The temperature is high and the landscape unstable.
Some raging leftist lunatic put a bullet through his neck, and you want to talk about Republicans right now? No.
No, I'm asking
not at all.
You said the Democrats have to own it too, but I'm asking,
Democrats own this.
But is there a problem with political violence across the spectrum?
Yeah, we're talking about Charlie Kirk right now. That's the subject of this that we're talking about right now. Democrats own this 100%.
The image of Kirk being shot and killed shouldn't divide us. It should bring us together as human beings, right? I mean, it's unimaginably horrific. He's a father of two. We all feel this pain. But then again, so are the murders of the Minnesota legislators, or the Parkland school children, or Sandy Hook. Images we never saw. That is, except for the parents and siblings forced to identify their own children. We've been spared that, but maybe that time is over. This photograph changed Americans' views on Vietnam and was one piece that helped end the war. But then the images of 9/11, as we note the 24th anniversary of those attacks today, they propelled us into a war against Iraq, who had nothing to do with the attack. We killed 1 million Iraqis wrongfully. So what if we showed Americans the victims of gun violence, the horror? Would that work? I don't know. My father was a cop and hated cop shows, the way they sanitize killing. He used to say if you show how slowly it took a gun victim to die, well, people would look at it much differently. Look, I don't know if he was right. We're living in a surreal existence, but for the real presence of guns and anger in this funnel cloud of confusion and despair. I interviewed and spoke to Charlie Kirk twice, and while I vehemently disagreed with his views and statements, I too was young once. When I met him, what with the differences in our ages, he was deferential to me, whether I deserved it or not. Not so much the second time, but even then I understood. Kirk started at 17. Even with the backdrop of Vietnam, I wasn't thinking about politics, and I too thought I knew everything.
Colby, I got the alert from News Nation that this had happened yesterday, and it was shortly before my kids came home from school. I've got a 16, 18-year-old, and I have a 20-year-old off at college, and the shock for them that this had happened really spoke to me about what Charlie Kirk meant to our youth. Whether you agreed with him or you didn't, he was a celebrity. He was somebody who showed up on college campuses. I said, describe Charlie Kirk for me. They said conservative, debates students, is a Christian, is smart. This really had a ripple effect among our youth in the last 24 hours.
The difference today, however, is huge. I didn't have 30 million followers on social media. I didn't have the President of the United States' private number. I wasn't called by the President to discuss policy. I didn't make $11 million a year paid by media organizations who made billions off me each year. I made mistakes that were heard by a small fraction of the people who listen and watch Charlie Kirk. In my opinion, Kirk was groomed and used by others, like Hannity, who was unrecognizable from the guy I knew in the 80s. What happened to them, and of course, what happened to us?
There are demonic forces at play.
Yeah, the Republican right and Charlie Kirk love to talk about evil as though it were a virus and their religion is the vaccine. But of course, that's not true. Religion is a powerful force, and every one of the approximate 3,000 religions believes theirs is the right one. And Charlie Kirk became not just a political figure, but a proselytizer for Christians. And combining religion and politics is exactly what Madison and the Founding Fathers feared. Hell, the author of the Declaration of Independence wasn't a Christian. Jefferson was a deist who believed in a rational, benevolent God and a universal moral order. But he rejected traditional Christian doctrines like the virgin birth, miracles, and the resurrection.
If you don't like our religion, then we don't want you in our country.
And look, it's impossible to discuss this without mentioning guns and the tragic irony of Kirk's absolute defense of what would mark his sad and final chapter. I grew up around guns and shot one when I was 7. My father made me promise to never be a cop, so he took me to a field and had me shoot a .38 at 7 years old. My ears rang for hours and my arm was sore for a couple of days. Definitely not the liberal approach, but it had the same result. Much later, in my 30s, I was allowed to go through the gun shooting range at Quantico with gun sounds and cardboard figures pretending to shoot at me. I knew it wasn't real, but my pulse raced to 160 beats a minute because my body couldn't tell the difference. And finally, here's my long-winded point. Guns aren't just metal, they become an extension of our weaknesses, which makes me ask this question. If people are the problem and not guns, why do we keep giving people guns? The rifle used to shoot Charlie Kirk killed him from 200 yards. Why do Americans need a gun that can shoot someone from 200 yards? Look, now is not the time to tear at the memory of Charlie Kirk. I felt sick the whole of yesterday and still feel that way today. And I'm sure many of you feel the same. Which brings us to this question. Forget for a moment why this might have happened and who actually pulled the trigger. Instead, ask, how do we protect innocent people moving forward? It's not an easy answer, but perhaps the biggest problem facing us is this. More people just played the recent billion-dollar lotto than voted in 2020 and 2024 combined. They were chasing the bullshit that states and legalized gambling sell. We've all been groomed to believe that we can take the shortcut. I was pissed at first when Trump called for the flags to be lowered for Charlie Kirk and not for the Minnesota lawmakers who were too assassinated for their beliefs. But now I think that maybe, until further notice, the flag should just stay that way until we figure this out.
Do you have no shame?
Goddamn right.
Are you not entertained?
It's sitting on my desk.
Who are you talking to?
I could be a stupid person.
Trump admitted he knew Epstein for 15 years.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
You're a nasty person.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list.
It's not fair.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
TikTok.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.